if you plan to launch your app on Apple Store, the App Store, then listen to this episode. We are going to talk about the review process required by Apple and how to optimize it to be sure to publish your app on time. Hi, I'm Amaury, founder and CEO at My CTO Friend, where founders come to learn how to build their tech startup. And with this Startup Snack series, available on both podcast and YouTube, we want to share the essential to make it easier for you to build your tech startup. And recently, one of my new clients had a huge stress because his app wasn't released 2 days before the official launch. Indeed, Apple is a brand with a quite high standard, and they review in details every single app that is published on their store. And if you are a startup and plan to publish your app on the App Store, or at least a new version, then know that there are some workaround tricks to optimize the review process and ensure your app will be on the store on time. So before to dive into the how to optimize the review process, let's talk about a bit of strategy. Because when we launch a startup, we can choose for several types of launch. And I'm going to stick to talk about the 3 main type of launch that I'm used to. The big launch, it's like for the iPhone, we tease a lot, then we open on a D date, and then we can, actually it can be risky for a startup because if you don't have experience with this type of launch and with developing a software, etc., then you can miss the deadline, and that can hurt your business, in other words. The second type of launch that I would recommend is the soft launch. Basically, you publish the app without communicating. And then you increase slowly the communication. And the last type of launch is the private launch. It is basically you tease your app, then you give an invitation code to your early users. This code can be unique for everyone, or it can be specific for each user, like Clubhouse did last year. And unless you raised tons of money, I really recommend you to do either the soft launch or the private launch. In both cases, you can anticipate what can happen during the Apple review process. Now, the big advantage with a private launch or soft launch is that we are not announcing publicly the release dates of your application before being sure that it will actually be available. And I've seen that countless times with the Apple founders. They announce a D-date, they organize an event, they tease the launch, they communicate on social media, etc., etc. And unfortunately, on the D-day, the app is not available, or it's not ready. So if it happened to you, don't worry, you are not alone and you won't be the last one. So just now, what's the best plan to optimize that review process and to anticipate it a bit, even if your app is not fully ready yet? First off, what Apple wants is to review and that overall the quality of your app is good. And to be sure, you need to follow their guidelines, of course. There are some privacy guidelines, there are authentications, rules that you need to follow, etc., etc. That's not the topic of today's video. Let's review the 3 types of review Apple can do. Basically, they have an initial review. The initial review can take up to 1 week, and that's where you have some high risks to be refused. It's because maybe you did not follow their guidelines, etc., etc. The second type is for a new version. Basically, they're going to review what you updated. Maybe it can be for bug fix or new features, etc. This one usually takes up to 3 to 4 days. And the last one, which is not that known, is the expected review, which can be done in sometimes few hours up to 24 hours. And to take advantage of this process, the best way is to give them, of course, the early version of your app, maybe without all the features that you are expecting for the launch. Just try to publish an app without any bug, of course, just a basic app with undeveloped features disabled, and just with a skeleton, like the sign-in and maybe one main feature, and send it to the Apple Store. Then they will review it, they will agree if there is anything wrong, and after, you can publish it and you will be in the review process. If you do not communicate about that app, there is not that much chance that people will find it. Now, if you tease your app, which of course is what I recommend, then put the invitation code that we talked about and give that invitation code to your early users. Of course, you will have to give it to Apple as well to review your app from the inside. One more thing about the private launch. It is very important to put a pre-registration link to the private beta version of your invitation code screen, the first screen that you have on your app. That link will redirect on your website, maybe with a form where you will be able to ask for an email. That way, you're going to generate new leads and you will be able to invite them later on by just sending them an invitation code. That way, your app can and will be validated early on by Apple, at least the initial version. And once you have that initial version published, it will be faster to be reviewed and published for a new version. And if you are rushing in time, you don't have enough time to be published, you can, in that case, ask for an expected review. The expected review is simple. You just publish your application for a usual review. You go on the Apple Store website. You can search for the link on by Google. You can search like Apple App Store review, expected review. And you will have that link and they describe that you need to contact them and to provide a reason for doing an expected review. Basically, they will review your application, your app in priority. Of course, don't ask for this type of review too often. Authorize they are free, of course, to refuse your requests and to keep it in the usual process. In conclusion, publishing an app on Apple Store is a process that can become a nightmare if it's not anticipated. Be sure to submit an early version. That way, you can be sure that you will have your application on the store. Put an invitation code to keep your app private, which can allow you to open it slowly to the world. And if you have a time constraint, then in that case, go for the expected review process. Contact Apple after submitting your new version, and you will have your app usually in less than 24 hours reviewed and published. It can be even few hours sometimes. If you enjoy learning with us and want to see more, consider subscribing. Help us spread the word by hitting the like button and by sharing with your entrepreneur friends. And if you have any question or want to suggest a topic, feel free to comment down below, or you can also check out our website to learn more about our program.